You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake, Illinois.
Hello, and welcome to Lake County Sports Scoop. I'm your host, Carson Beck, and I'm joined by Rusty Silber today, and you're listening to 98.3 WRLR, the voice of Lake County. Rusty, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Wait a minute. Did I hear you were out of town last week?
Not only out of town, but out of country, and I think we're also missing the usual partner in crime that was with you last week. Helping you out, Fidel Garcia, as we welcome in a third member of the Garcia family, as Fidel just had his third child, a boy, 2 days ago, and we congratulate Coach Fidel, and best of luck for him and his family going forward.
Yeah, congratulations off to him. I mean, another addition to the family. I'm sure he's got to work, cut out for him, going to 3 kids now. So that's a lot.
Definitely, and he's got his work cut out for sure on the basketball court. But I know last week on Lake County Sports Scoop, even though I wasn't here, Rusty and Fidel recapped the holiday tournaments that were going on in high school basketball. But there was a little shortage of action going on last week, but we'll still recap it. And don't worry, we'll preview this week's action as well. And we'll be joined by Joe Aguilar, who has his own show on Thursdays right here on WRLR, Lake County Sports Talk, also known as the John and Joe Show. He'll be joining us soon right here on the show to help preview the game that you can catch right here on WRLR. The Mundelein Mustangs taking on the Stevenson Patriots this Friday. And I believe pregame is at 6, game at 7, if I'm correct, Rusty?
Well, the 6 o'clock hour will have the Joe and John Show, Lake County Sports Talk. And then after that will be tip between the Mustangs and the Patriots. 2
undefeated teams in conference, and we know both teams had a very successful holiday run, but a very important game, not only within the county, but you can also possibly argue seeding implications in the 4A bracket. So an exciting one to look forward to indeed. But let's recap what went on last week for our Lake County teams. On Friday at Moline, Marion Catholic defeated Carmel 68-49. Also in Moline, Rock Island defeated the Zion Benton ZBs 88-76. On Saturday, Zion Benton bounced back with a win at Moline over Downstate Morton 72-55. And also in Moline on Saturday, Carmel lost again, falling to Moline, the host school, 65-55. As Kamari Wilson of the Corsairs scored 27 points in the losing effort, as well as Uzma Harper contributed 11 points. Kamari Wilson broke the 1,000 career point mark. And Rusty, I believe you were talking to me a couple of days ago to some other players in Lake County cracked the 1,000-point mark.
Well, yeah, there was on the girls' side. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it's interesting because that same night where I was at Libertyville, there was a player there that ended up breaking the 1,000-point mark as well. So, I mean, that's kind of funny when you get Kamari Wilson can do it in one spot, and then you get another spot where you find another player, which happened to be from Champaign Central, by the name of Cleo Terry. And he's only a junior and breaks 1,000 points. And he was something. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then there was one of the girls from Stevenson that did it as well, and that was Avery King. So 3 players in one night breaking 1,000 points. I guess things come in threes.
I guess so. And What do you think we can take from the action, Moline, for both teams in Carmel and Zion before we move on to the other games that went on this past week?
Well, one thing, and I know we were talking to Coach Fidel last week about this, if you ever get a chance to go see storied facilities, storied places, a lot of times you go to the holiday tournaments, and whether you go, Hinsdale Central or maybe go out to Marengo to the ECC Nichols tournament, and even downstate where Carmel went to, because they went to the, down in Centralia. All these places have these historic-looking field houses, historic gyms. And even out in Moline, and I got a chance to see this on social media. Somebody put up pictures of Wharton Fieldhouse. And one thing that caught my eye, it's a nice old-fashioned looking gym. You got two-tier seats that are kind of raised. But the biggest thing that caught my attention was this 4-panel scoreboard that sat above the court. Now, I got to say this, Carson. Do you know of any gyms that have a 4-panel scoreboard in this day and age? There's not many that I know of. And that's pretty cool. I'm thinking I'm down at the old Chicago Stadium, or I'm going down there now and seeing these big scoreboards at the United Center or in these college campuses. But Wharton Fieldhouse has this 4-panel scoreboard. That's pretty cool. And I was like, wow, this would be fun to not only cover a game there, but it'd be fun as a player to be playing on an old-fashioned looking court, to have the experience of being out there to say, hey, I got a chance to play at Wharton Fieldhouse, out in Moline. This is historic. This is, a very good old-fashioned looking basketball court. And I'm sure these players had in their mind, I can imagine how many other players had their opportunity to play at something like that.
Coach Garcia is chiming in. He said Aurora East has one of those.
Well, I'm sure there's a few others out there. I mean, you go down to Peoria, the Carver Center, you got a big board like that down there. But, the odd thing is, I don't know if I've ever seen a 4-panel scoreboard like that, to be honest, in all the years that I've been sports writing. And I hate to throw this out because Joe Aguilar and I, and there's a few other media hypes, have thrown this out on social media this week. And I'm just jumping off target here a little bit. With all the years that we've been writing, to be honest, we've hit 5 decades, and I'm like, that can't be possible. But we've been writing since well before you were born, Carson, taking myself back to the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 10s, and now 20s. So that's a long time to realize, wow, I haven't been writing that long years-wise, but I've been in that many decades. I feel like Minnie Minoso, baseball-wise, if you think about that. But it's kind of cool that you see something that's unusual. We just see so many things in high school sports that we've covered for so many years, but to see something like this, I'm like, God, I wish I could go out there and cover that tournament or cover that showdown this weekend to see what it was like and experience the feeling out there.
Every school and every environment, every town has its own unique little special sprinkle of tradition and uniqueness, and I love it in this local sports area. But let's move on and recap some more games from this past week. On Saturday, Grayslake North improved to 4-6, a win over Prairie Ridge, 67-49. Jason Donahue and Tony Hines both contributed 15 points in the win for the Knights. Also on Saturday, Round Lake won at Wheeling, 76-66, to improve to 11-3. On Saturday, North Chicago lost a close one to Corliss, 43-40. With the loss, North Chicago drops to 4-11 on the season. So, Rusty, I want to pump the brakes. Some narratives are being broken in some traditional teams. Round Lake is just a fun story to watch. Just to see that record already is just astonishing and mind-blowing to see that program rising up. And who knows where they will fall in the Northern Lake County race. And Grayslake North, a team that I've been scratching my head on, usually a consistent contender, seeing them with a losing record and a team that I thought was going to be in the mix for Northern Lake County, it's really interesting to see how the narratives have switched for both of those, as well as North Chicago, a team that's always been usually the cream of the crop in that conference.
Well, first off, North Chicago, do not brush aside them right now. The Warhawks, Gerald Coleman had a lot of great success with this team. Even though the record's at 4-11, they played some pretty good, talented teams. Corliss was no slouch over the weekend. And it was a low-scoring game. I think North Chicago doesn't have the type of players that they had in past years. Maybe they had to slow it down and try to beat them that way on their court. They had chances to win this game, from what I understand, but this team is still unbeaten. And a lot of people are overlooking that in the Northern Lake County Conference. And I've said this to you. Until teams in that conference can step up to beat them, because they've had 2 games already that both of them went to overtime, and guess what? The Warhawks won both of those games. So they're 2-0 right now, along with Round Lake and Wakanda. Now, we'll see down the road here, because they're going to have to play those teams. We'll see some other teams, too. It's a wide-open race in that Northern Lake County Conference. Grays Lake North, I had a chance to see that game against Prairie Ridge. It was a close game first quarter, and then late first quarter on Saturday, they went on a run, put up a dozen points. They rolled away with that game, and they were up by 20-plus points, and they ended up winning 67-39. And tell you the truth, the Knights looked awfully good. The big thing is, Ryan Cannelli, was out for the season. I like what's around them. There's a lot of good players that sit there. I mean, you've got Jason Dombrowski, who's a very good player. I like the way he plays out there. He can handle the ball well. He can shoot. But Tony Hines, Moore, Jason Donahue. You got a bunch of players out there that are very skillful. They know how to play with each other, along with Jalen Thomas. A lot of these guys played last year. They know what winning basketball is about. And here's the other catch, too, about Grays Lake North. They're one of the few schools, and the only one in Lake County that I know of, that did not play a game over the holiday break. And the question is that good or bad? Having all that time off, it can be good if you got some injuries, get a little time away from the court, refocus, retool yourself to get ready through the conference slate. So the Knights are a little bit different because they don't play in a winter or holiday break type tournament. This could help them down the road.
So I noticed that the way you're spinning North Chicago, could we say in the Northern Lake County Conference, at least for now, it's Wakanda and Round Lake, the 2, and then the third team mix can be North Chicago? Or
I can't even say where it's going to go, to be honest.
How are you feeling it out right now?
I'll tell you the truth. I've seen most of the teams. I have not had a chance to see Round Lake, but I like what they got going on there with McNeil and Harris. Fine players over there. Wakanda with Donovan Carter, he's showing some great numbers. Even I haven't seen them as well, but I've seen Lakes. I've seen Grays Lake Central. A lot of these teams kind of have this good play with each other. I mean, Antioch's another team I haven't had a chance to see. And I think you're looking at, really, if you think of 14 games, this may come down to a team either 10-4 or maybe 11 and maybe 9-5. Can we go that far and say 5 losses could win this conference? But I would think somebody who gets to 10-4 within conference play will probably be your winner this year.
I feel like for sure this conference is going to beat up on each other, and there won't be an outright winner. I feel for sure it'll be shared. I can say that. I feel
it's possible. Anything's possible on that avenue. In comparison to North Suburban, where you can say there's a 2-team race right now, but you got to watch out for some other teams that might come up and sneak victories off you.
I don't know, Rusty. I think it could be 3 or 4 if you really think about it. Libertyville and Zion are no teams you can take lightly, and you even saw Lake Forest beat Warren. So no conference you can take lightly, especially in the Lake County area. But speaking of the North Suburban, the last game we'll recap before we start previewing some games is Libertyville, the Wildcats. We just mentioned their name. They defeated Champaign Central by 11, 50-39. Will Moore scored 18 points. We had him on the show a few weeks back. Jackson Watson for the Cats also scored 11 points. Chase Bonder came off the bench, contributing 10 points for Libertyville. With the win, the Wildcats improved to 9-4. So I know they kind of had they had to play Stevenson earlier in their conference slate, but I think Libertyville is a team that can really mess with teams' path to the title up, and who knows how far they can go in playoffs. This team is kind of reloaded from last year. It was kind of odd to see them with a losing record last year, but they have a really solid resume in wins this year. I remember they beat Glenbrook North. I'm trying to think of other teams that they beat, but, man, Libertyville is starting to seem like the Libertyville I've been growing up to watch and see.
Carson, you got to look at the games that they played. And even in their 4 losses they've had, they have been right there with these teams. And one thing I saw in the game, because I was out there covering it for the Herald on Saturday night, is their will to win, not with Will Moore, but Chase Bonder is a guy that comes off the bench, a sophomore, 6'4", and he has really come together with this team. You know, he's fit in very well as a sophomore. The rest of the teammates have worked with him. He likes the speed of the play. I mean, he made a layup beating the buzzer at the end of the third quarter, came out in the fourth quarter, hit a free throw line jump shot, and then followed it up with a three-pointer that put him in the lead. Now, in this game alone, they were down 21-9 in the early part of the second quarter, okay? And Brian Zerkowski took a timeout, kind of got the boys refocused, re-energized. Hey, we can play basketball. We can be with this team. We've got to play the game. We got to know how to do it. He set the table better for his team. This is where a coach takes over. They're losing this game 21-9. You know, you think, well, if maybe we stay close, we got a shot. Well, by halftime, it was 24-23. Big difference. By the end of the third quarter, they took a slim lead. By the fourth quarter, they kept rolling. They were up by 10 or 12 points. They ended up winning by 11. Okay? From that point, they were down 21-9. They outscored them what I thought was 41-15. It was actually 41-18 with a late bucket by Champaign Central. Okay, Champaign Central's got some players. I mentioned that Terry player who's got a total of 1,000-plus points. But there was another player on the team they were really worried about on that squad, which happened to be a guy that shoots tons of three-pointers, and that was this guy, Price Punke. This guy got like 53 pointers this season already. And Libertyville's attack was to shut down the three-pointers. They knew coming in, they looked at film, this is how we're going to stop this Maroons team. And this Maroons team is not a bad club, too. Record-wise, they came in right around the 500 mark. I mean, they played pretty good basketball in Champaign. And by the way, I'll throw this out quickly here. The reason why this contest is going on between Champaign Central and Libertyville, some people don't realize it, but John Woods, the athletic director, he originally came from Champaign down there. He was a basketball coach and the AD down in Champaign for Central there for 25 years before he took the job here at Libertyville. So that's where this game gets set up between the two. You always find out, why are you playing Champaign? So this year, last year they tried to come up here and got snowed out. So they came back up again, and next year, Libertyville's supposed to go back down there to play the back-to-back on this situation. And maybe go over to State Farm and catch the game with Illini if they can do that down in Champaign. Now, I did talk to Brian Zerkowski after the game.
Yes.
And this is interesting because I asked him about the timeout. I asked him about the difference in the points. And this is what he had to say about it. 21-9. Took a timeout or so, I believe, in there. And you guys finished the game 41-15. What does that mean to you?
It's exactly what this team we can do, what we're capable of doing, and we always talk about it, not getting a slow start. And when we called that timeout, it was just one of those, relax, slow down. We're a better team than this. We have to slow down. We have to know our scouting report, and hats off to our guys playing great defense down the stretch, forced a lot of turnovers, and shared the ball once again. And I think that was the one thing in the first half. I don't think we did a great job of sharing the ball. In the second half, we got everybody going. And again, our balanced attack is one of the reasons we came out with this victory.
Is it scoring, or is it just playing team defense that made the game go in your direction?
And I think that's kind of the idea when you talk about, balanced attack is normally used as an offensive thing, but we use it as a defensive thing. Jackson's job was to take away Price Punke, the number 10. We know he's an excellent shooter. He's a great shooter. And we put Will on Taylor, Terry? Yeah, Terry. I keep saying Taylor. Terry. And Will did a great job on him, but we said it's the other three that are going to be key for our team defense. The other three have to be ready to help, have to be willing to take that charge, have to be willing to rotate. And again, I look at balanced attack as an offense and defensive thing.
What does this win do for the team starting the new year?
This is always a tough game after 4 days off, and for both teams. And they had to travel up here, and I think this is good to get a good start into the new year. We talked about it's a new season, and you start off the new season 1-0, and I think it's we got to keep this thinking. Got to keep this momentum going in next Tuesday night versus Grant at home.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. You heard it there. I mean, I'll tell you, the great way to start off the new year to get a vision, Carson, is to win. And don't count out this Libertyville team. And they're in the mix like anybody else.
without a doubt. And let's talk about two teams that are for sure in the mix as of now, at least, as long as no wheels fall off. The game of the week in the North Suburban Conference, Mundelein Mustangs, who are 13-1, 3-0 in conference, will travel to Stevenson, who are 11-3, 3-0 in conference. Keynotes about this game. This will be the first time that Trey Baker for Mundelein will play against his former school in Stevenson. As we know, he was a transfer from Stevenson, now playing in Mundelein as a junior. This is an essential game not only in the North Suburban, but in all of 4A. Stevenson doesn't have any other games this week. Mundelein will play at Lake Zurich this Saturday, where they'll take on Willowbrook. But let's get Joe Aguilar on the line and see what he knows about this key matchup.
It's funny you brought that up about the matchup for Friday because, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen between the two teams because both of these teams are something to take a look at for when they play each other.
How we doing, Joe? Welcome to the Lake County Sports Scoop, and we welcome you, as always, to give your expertise on a very key matchup this Friday night.
Hey guys. Hey, Carson. Hey, Rusty. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And Joe, I want your first opinion. How would you say is the key for both teams in this very key matchup for both schools to them get a victory at Stevenson for both teams? What would you break down from both teams as of now?
Well, it should be a great game, right? Mundelein beat them actually at Stevenson. I covered that game 2 years ago when Enright and Abube were freshmen, and then last year Stevenson beat Mundelein twice en route to the NSC title, sharing it with Waukegans. And then you look at this year, I think, really no surprises so far. I think if anyone's been a surprise, maybe Mundelein a little bit, just because they really upped their schedule this year, guys, especially going down to Collinsville. And they really not skipped a beat. They're 13-1, started 13-0, then lost to a really great Collinsville team in the title game there. But that's their first blemish, and so even Matt Badgley didn't know if they would be would have as good a one-loss record necessarily as last year, just because of the beefed-up schedule. But that they've been getting great play, from their big four, and that now includes Trey Baker. So. And this is kind of a homecoming game for Trey. As you guys know, spent his first 2 years of high school at Stevenson, has now come back to Mundelein where he's grown up, and he's been a huge factor for Mundelein. So you're facing a Stevenson team that, they've lost 2 in a row. They lost their final 2 games at Hinsdale Central. Rusty was out there, for I think pretty much all 4 games, right, Rusty? Or 3 of them, the first 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Stevenson, it's Pat Ambrose, and, you never really, I've learned, you don't bet against Pat Ambrose. You never discount Stevenson. They just run their stuff so well, and they're so disciplined. They don't take bad shots. And on their home court, they're really good, undefeated at home so far. They played only, I think they've only played 2 home games actually so far this year, because they played at Palatine, to open the season over Thanksgiving, and then went down to Hinsdale Central for Christmas. But I don't know, guys. It just should be a really good game. It's a lot of the key guys we saw for both teams from each of the last 2 seasons, and then with Matt Ambrose and Abube and Enright, those guys have been playing on varsity, the last 3 seasons now. So I just think it should be a real good game. And it's who plays better, I guess. I think we know what each team has as far as personnel wise and what they do well, and who's going to be on that day. I've seen Stevenson be on so many times over the last 15 years or so on their home court, and with teams that didn't have Jalen Brunson on them as well. So. I like Stevenson on their home court, but, Mundelein's been really playing fantastic basketball all season.
Hey, Joe, you're right. I saw Stevenson last week at Hinsdale Central, and, seeing 3 of the 4 games, and we had a chance to talk to R.J. Holmes last week. I will say this. There was a little bit of a downfall from Stevenson shooting the basketball from beyond the arc. They had problems doing that. And maybe as like a number of teams hitting the holiday break, they need some time off. But in my mind, and I'm sure you're thinking this too, if you look at the experience factor of what Stevenson has done on the resume, what they have played over last year with the majority of their team back except for one player, you would think they should have an edge over Mundelein, especially on their home court. But do you think experience plays a role in a game like this one?
Well, maybe, but I think both teams are experienced, right? I mean, again, going back, 2 years ago now, when Enright and Abube were freshmen and beating Stevenson on its home court. So I just think it should be a really, really good game. And yeah, Rusty, I mean, they lost their last 2 games. Stevenson at Hinsdale didn't shoot the ball well, and I think almost in 3 or 4 of those games, or a couple of them anyway, they fell behind early, couldn't recover. And that's what happens when you can't knock down shots, right? All of a sudden you spot holes, and Stevenson's not a team that's I don't think is really, going to score points in a flurry like that if they're not shooting it well. I mean, if they're not shooting it well from the arc, that is, because that's where they can beat you, all right? I mean, both Ambroses, Matthew and Evan, John Itunes, Matt Kaznikov, they all can shoot from the arc. So I think they hit their shots early. Look out. I mean, it's Stevenson, and they can take you on what you want to do well. But, man, Mundelein, with the play they're getting from Enright and Abube being the force he was. I mean, I thought Abube, I saw Mundelein, I didn't go down to Collinsville, but saw them against Lake Park, their final game before they headed down to Collinsville, and that was, the battle of 2 9-0 teams at the time. Abube was fantastic at both ends of the court, and he's been doing that. He continued his great play down in Collinsville, averaged a little better than 16 a game, I think it was, 7 boards, and he was blocking his 3-4 shots a game. So I just think we're looking at a real fun, much anticipated game Friday night, and then we'll see what happens again when they play. It's actually on Valentine's Day when they meet again. These 2 teams at Mundelein.
One of the things, Joe, and I know how you're putting Mundelein, in the phrase, hey, they got experience and everything. The one thing I do stand, and I give a really good kudos to this group, is the way that they don't have this give-up attitude. And I think Carson and I know this because we were both up at the game against Zion Benton on the road on a rare Monday night game. But they came from behind. They show what they could do to win games like that. And there's some eagerness and there's some, should we throw the word hungry out there? They just don't give up in games. They have this mentality of comeback attitude. So you think you got them on the ropes, you think you're going to beat them, but yet there's a couple players that say, no, we're not going down without a fight. We're going to come back and win this game. And the question I got for you is, how much could that help in playing Stevenson on their home court?
Yeah, I think it's huge, no question about it. And the fact that they know they can score when they have to because they too have the shooters now. And again, Trey Baker, I didn't know quite what to expect from him this season. I mean, he's a kid who, I've been hearing about this junior group since they were 7th graders. I mean, they've been waiting for this group to get here, and their success. I don't want to say it's come early. They won 20 games with this group last season, but you see they're already up to 13 wins now. We just reached January, and now you bring in Trey, who didn't play a lot at Stevenson. He was on the varsity roster, I believe, both his freshman and sophomore years early, and then kind of disappeared a little bit. I think last year, in fact, when Pat Ambrose brought up Evan, who didn't start the season on varsity, they sent Trey down, and Trey kind of got buried. I saw him playing a playoff game at Lake Forest that actually hit a couple big 3-pointers in the first half for Stevenson, and then then he transfers to Mundelein. So I knew there's a ton of upside with him. He's not the biggest kid, Trey is only about my size, like 5'9", but he can really shoot and he can penetrate. I saw them play. I want to say it was against. Well, who did I see them play earlier? Maybe it wasn't the Warren game.
Deerfield, maybe?
Earlier this season. I'm trying to think. Deerfield game, yes. And Trey had a real rough first half. I think he was 0 of 6 from the floor. Couldn't buy a shot. Second half, he came out. He was the difference in the game. And Mundelein won the game 56-46. And Trey had a huge night. He had 18 points that night. I think they were all in the second half. They were all in the second half. So when he gets going, and if he can get going, so I'll be curious to see like his nerves playing against his buddies. The guys he's practiced with the last 2 years at Stevenson. Will he be nervous and be off, or will he be really fired up and beyond? So I'm really kind of curious to see what kind of game Trey has against his former Stevenson teammates.
Joe, last question for you from me. I kind of want your take on what is maybe Mundelein's, I don't want to call it weakness, but because they only had one loss, but maybe some vulnerable areas that Stevenson can take away from Mundelein, and vice versa, Mundelein can take from Stevenson and their losses that they can take advantage of from each other.
Well, that's a great question, Carson. And I don't know if really Mundelein has many weaknesses. Again, they got 4 guys. What I really like about their team is they have guys who really fit their spots on the court. They got the great point guard in Connor Enright. Now they've got a complimentary guard who can penetrate a little and can really shoot it in Trey Baker. They got the big guy, the beast down low in Abube. They got their good wing 3-player in Jack Bicus. And then they got Sam Atade, who's, he doesn't score. He gets maybe 1 basket a game, if that, but he rebounds the heck out of the ball and does all the dirty work. So you love to have a player like that. So they really have 5 guys who fit their roles perfectly, I think. And again, like any team, if they don't, Stevenson can somehow limit their effectiveness from the arc. If Enright isn't able to penetrate and get shots to fall, then all of a sudden, I don't think this is going to be an 80-70 game. I think it's going to be a good half-court game, and I could see it, being 50 to in the 50s to 40s even. That's the kind of game I'm expecting. And again, it's who's going to, it sounds cliche, right? But who's going to execute shots? I don't think either team is really going to shoot themselves in the foot. We just haven't seen that really from either team. I mean, it's one thing if you don't, shoot well, but as far as just sloppy turnovers, being out of position, not hustling back and transition, that kind of thing, that's not what either of these teams do. I just expect a real quality basketball game Friday where each possession is really important.
Without a doubt, Joe, and Rusty and I will both catch you there on Friday at the game. And we thank you, as always, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to come here on the show, and have a good rest of your week. And Happy New Year as well.
And, yeah, thanks. Happy New Year to you guys. And John Kerr and I will be back. We've been off the last couple of weeks. We'll be back Thursday at 1 o'clock on RLR for our show. The John and Joe show. So, guys, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's always a treat to listen on Thursdays, and we'll see you Friday. Have a good rest of your week, Joe.
Thanks, Carson. Thanks, Rusty.
That was our own Joe Aguilar helping us out, giving us a little expertise on this Friday's game of the week that you can catch right here on WRLR on Friday. Tip-off at 7. But we're going to head to break, but when we come back, we'll cover the remaining games in the county. And don't touch that dial. Plenty of action when we come back from break. You're listening to Lake County Sports Scoop on 98.3 WRLR, the voice of Lake County.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake, Illinois.
Today's sports broadcast is made possible by O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC. Proud to sponsor another season of Lake County High School sports broadcasts on WRLR 98.3 FM. Helping home buyers, sellers, and others with real estate transactions. O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC can be reached at 847-675-4790.
Hi, I'm Frank Tarzeski, inviting you to listen to Music Matters every Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3 on your FM dial. I play polkas, I play country, I play crazy songs, I play requests and jazz. That's Music Matters 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3.
Cornicchione's New York-style pizzeria in Antioch at Routes 83 and 173 is another proud sponsor of WRLR Sports. Cornicchione's pizza dough is made from scratch using a family recipe that originated in Brooklyn, New York. Their dough is proofed at least 24 hours. Cornicchione's menu includes pizzas, calzones, pasta, much more. They have dine-in, carry-out, and delivery. Their number is 224-308-1499.
Parents, did you know that high school dropouts make 42% less than graduates? Someone will have to make up that difference, and chances are that will be you. That means paying 42% of their groceries.
Ooh, more candy.
42% of their dentist bills.
No more candy.
Even 42% of their therapy sessions.
It's all my dad's fault.
Save your money. Encourage your kids to stay in school. For help and advice, call 877-FORAKID. A message from the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
I like doo-wop music. My friends like doo-wop music. But all that counts is you like doo-wop music. I know you do. Admit it, you really do. Mark Shanahan likes doo-wop too. He's got a doo-wopper of a music library and lots of doo-wop energy. He wants to share his doo-wop music with you. So set your fingers snapping and tune that dial to Mark's doo-wop hour every Monday afternoon at 2, right here on 98.3 FM WRLR and WRLR.FM online. Doo-wop.
WRLR 98.3 FM.
And we're back to Lake County Sports Scoop. You're listening to 98.3 WRLR. I'm Carson Beck, your host, and I'm joined by Rusty Silber today, filling in for Fidel Garcia, Carmel Corsairs assistant boys basketball coach, as he tends to his newest member of the Garcia family. But Rusty, we still got a handful of Lake County games to go over, and a few of them are some kind of old school, old North Suburban Prairie, North Suburban Lakes kind of games like we would have had.
Hold on a second. Let me help you out. That was the old North Suburban Conference that included the Lakes Division against the Prairie Division games.
Correct.
So now you got it as the North Suburban and the Northern Lake County Conference. See, if you want to go really far back, I could take you a little stretch farther. And say the small conference or the small schools were part of what was known as the Old Northwest Suburban Conference, and that goes back in the 1990s. See, I'm taking you back even further, and you're like, what? Yes, there was a conference called the Northwest Suburban Conference until they formed a North Suburban Conference where you had the Lakes, and then you had the Prairie Division.
I may sound like a rookie asking this,
but you got to know history.
But when was the Lake and Prairie first started?
It started right around the year 2000. It might be 2001, I'm thinking of.
So right when I was coming out of diapers.
For you, yeah. But one thing to take in consideration, the smaller schools being mixed with the bigger schools in Lake County, I'm a true believer, and maybe a few other people are, it made these other schools better. It really made them to get in the forefront to be better scheduling, better players, and where the smaller school players are at these days, they think they can compete with the bigger schools.
So let's start off with one of those matchups. We talked a little bit about them earlier. The Libertyville Wildcats hosting the Grant Bulldogs. Grant is 4-10, Libertyville 9-4. What should we look forward to in this matchup, and maybe how it can help each one of these teams' season going forward? And then we'll preview Libertyville at Lake Zurich, which will be on Friday, a conference matchup.
Well, one thing you look at is the way Grant played during the holiday tournament at Jacobs. They didn't get what they wanted in the way of victories, but you learned how to play better basketball against some different teams. Now, going against Libertyville for what they did over this past week or over the weekend, take on the Champaign Central, they didn't come out playing that strong. And maybe they had somebody out there taking a look at that game. That's possible. But when they did play better defense and got their game together, that run of 41-18 the last three quarters, that was impressive to see. And that's something Grant's got to be worried about, because if Libertyville plays their game, moves the ball around, able to shoot the ball, able to get it to the basket, Grant's not going to be able to find that answer. They're a young team this year. They're building. They're trying to build for the future a little bit. And I think the record shows that. I got nothing to take away from Wayne Bosworth, great coach, and he'll find ways to be competitive in this game. But the Wildcats certainly had a big win to carry themselves on for the game coming up this Tuesday and for conference.
How competitive Grant plays will certainly tell how the season will turn for the Bulldogs, a team that we can't forget won the conference last year. And What do you take from the Libertyville at Lake Zurich game? We can certainly tell that the Bears have improved from last season, but do you think they have enough competitiveness to possibly pull off this upset in the Bears den, or do you think it just might be a little too much knowing the momentum of the Wildcats so far?
Well, it's interesting. Being out at Lake Forest a few weeks ago, watching Warren and Lake Forest go at each other there, you got to take in consideration, or not, I stand corrected. Actually, it was Lake Forest was at Lake Zurich a few weeks ago when I saw that game. I saw Warren playing Lake Forest the week after. But the thing is, talking to Phil Escalas was telling me, going to Lake Zurich is not the easiest place to play. The shooting backgrounds are tough. People always talk about Warren having tough times, but it's a big field house, big stands. It's a different venue than playing at Libertyville, with the smaller gyms, the old-fashioned gyms. But Lake Zurich is tough to play, and if you don't hit your shots right away, you may not get comfortable in there. And that could be the case for Libertyville. Lake Zurich has been playing some better basketball at times, especially right in their field house.
Without a doubt, and it's also very dark in there, too. So
it does have that look to be a little bit darker. They kind of close off the lights on the outsides a little bit. So I could see that. I see that.
And let's not forget that the Bulldogs will take on their rivals Antioch. It'll be at Grant on Saturday. Antioch is 4-5, winless in conference. Grant is also winless in conference. I know you haven't seen much of Antioch, but how would you say these teams match up with each other?
Boy, I think it'll be a great matchup. This is your typical matchup in the Northern Lake County Conference. And if either team wants to get their first victory, it's going to be in this one. Both of them have lost 2 games so far. Antioch 4-5, Grant 4-10 overall. And you would think, that home court advantage might be good, but these two teams kind of rival each other when they play each other out there. They know each other out there. They play ball. They do other sports together. And you get this feeling like it's a rivalry-type game. And maybe the edge might go to Grant a little bit over Antioch, but I heard there's an Ethan Cadillac Manis playing out there on the team, and I heard he's got some good moves on the basketball court. We see what he can do as a quarterback playing football, but I'm anxious to see him play basketball down the road.
What do you like to see him play more, football or basketball?
It's obvious. You think he's going to be one of the best football players we've seen from Lake County in a long time, headed to Minnesota. That's where he wants to go right now, but I'd like to see what he can do on the basketball court. I really would. I think he's got some ability to do other sports.
Without a doubt, and that'd certainly be a competitive matchup indeed. And this Tuesday, speaking of Antioch, they will take on Vernon Hills, who is 8-7. Let's not forget they used to share that Prairie Division a few years back. Cougar is playing some competitive basketball as of late, and Vernon Hills will also host Central Suburban League North rival Maine West, who is 4-8, 1-2 in the North Suburban. Excuse me.
Central Suburban North.
Central Suburban League North. Correct. And Vernon Hills is also 1-2 in conference play. So how would you say, first of all, Vernon Hills will match up with Antioch? And then what do you think Vernon Hills can take away in the game with Maine East, a team that's a little down than they usually are on the basketball field?
It's an interesting matchup, Antioch at Vernon Hills first off. Vernon Hills, I think that they're coming along pretty good. However, they're still losing a couple players. Moore's out. Jacobson's been out with his knee. They got some good guards. It's a question of hanging on the basketball. If they can stay in control, hit their shots, they can be a good team. You're talented. They're missing some good height around the basket. They really are. But I do like the way they're playing basketball. Against Antioch, they should win at home, but you never know what to expect. Going against Maine West had a pretty good run. I don't know if you realize they beat Libertyville at the Wheeling Harwood Classic. Surprise? Maybe not. I think Maine West is the type of team that's trying to show what they can do in the Central Suburban group, along with some of the other teams that are out there. They've always been a type of team that kind of runs off the girls in a way, because that girls team is so good and talented. And the thing is, if you got a really good girls team, hey, I want to be like them, with all the wins that they got, because they won a state championship last year. They think they can be better. I know they're going to be challenging Vernon Hills at home, so it'll be a good matchup come up Friday night.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just feel bad for Vernon Hills with that injury bug. It feels like yesterday. I'm not sure if you remember this. They were playing the North Suburban Championship in 2014 when they went undefeated in that division. So I just want to see some competitiveness brought back to the Vernon Hills program. Should be an exciting one in both games, indeed. But the next matchup we'll look at is on Tuesday as the Lake Forest Scouts play at Grays Lake North Knights. Rusty, what do you take from this Lake Forest team that I thought from the beginning of the year, it's still up to this point, you can't take lightly with it when Phil Escala is the coach of the Scouts? And what do you take in this matchup that maybe these teams kind of mirror each other, and it's a matter of who can bounce off this game going forward?
Tell you the truth, you can't take lightly the freshman that's out there, Asa Thomas. This guy at 6'4", he's not afraid of anybody. And in talking with them and seeing what he did against the Warren, football players, he was weaving around them. Hey, big guys, no problem. I'll just take it to the basket and put it over the top of them. He can do it. He's not, your typical freshman. I'd imagine what he's going to be like by the time he's a senior. Put a little muscle on him. I mean, could he be like an Evan Boudreaux that they had years ago who went D1? I'm not sure, but I'll tell you something. He's pretty good to watch. He's got talent. And tell you the truth, Lake Forest at Grays Lake North, to be honest, will be a good matchup tomorrow night. You got some good talent. What Grays Lake North did to Prairie Ridge on Saturday, it's not going to be the same type of team, Prairie Ridge, as a Lake Forest, with a better coach and some better players. But this could be a good game that might come down to the final shot or in the final quarter. It will be good between the two teams.
Without a doubt, I think these teams very much mirror each other. Should be competitive indeed, and I'm really curious to see how both teams bounce off of this game moving forward in terms of momentum. On Friday, Lake Forest will host Waukegan, who is 1-13, 0-2 North Suburban. Rusty, I know you saw Waukegan when they played at Carmel, and I saw them in that game as well as at Mundelein. This Waukegan team fights, especially in that first quarter. They come out of the gates swinging. So how would you say that matchup faces? Do you think this can be a game that Waukegan can bounce some momentum into their stats?
I want to see Waukegan take the second step now. They've gone with a lot of youth, a lot of younger players. I've heard they even brought up some more youngsters than what we saw back at Carmel. Now, the thing is, they went through, playing at Wheeling. They didn't win any games there. They've got one win to speak of against Lakes. All right, here's January. All these players are learning under Ron Ashlaw. Smart coach, probably one of the best coaches in Lake County. And I truly believe that. And I believe also he's going to find ways to win games in the conference. I believe that. And they're going to be surprises to us, but to him, no. That's going to be part of their new era, their growth movement to get better. I could see Waukegan, to be honest, maybe being a 500 team. Yes, you look at me with your eyes wide open. Yes, maybe. If they can get the youth to be stronger than what they have been, they can win maybe 4, 5, 6 games, getting close to 500 in that conference.
Sounds like you can see some upsets down the road.
I see it. It happens. It happens. And, that's if they're growing. If they're growing to the level that Ron Ashlaw sees them, to play a full 32-minute game. That's the tough part.
Without a doubt. I just want to see them bounce back the second half portion of the season. Grays Lake North will host Round Lake Panthers, who are currently 11-3, 2-0 in conference. Grays Lake North winless in conference. A very impressive Round Lake team. What would you say is the biggest factor in terms of why Round Lake is taking strides and how they can keep adding on to it?
McNeil and Williams. Remember that name. It's not an accounting firm. It's two really good players at Round Lake leading this team to some place they have not been for over 10 years, to be honest. I mean, here's a team that has, won 11 games now, somewhere in that fashion. They've still had a pretty good run out at the ECC Nichols tournament in Marengo. They've got ability, and I want to see, this is going to be a good week for Round Lake. They're going to be at Lake Zurich. They're going to take on Grays Lake North. Both of these are going to be pretty good. I mean, to be honest, it's going to be a good matchup, for Round Lake to take on these two teams at the same portion. It's going to be interesting to see how Grays Lake North matches up. with Round Lake and also with somebody with the North Suburban.
I just want to see Grays Lake North start to build some momentum in the second half portion of the year. We had the Round Lake coach on a few weeks ago, but exciting one indeed. On Tuesday as well, the Carmel Corsairs will play at Lakes. Carmel 6-9, Lakes 5-8, and Carmel also play Marion Central, their East Suburban Catholic rivals, on Friday, who is 2-11. But Rusty, I think Carmel needs to find some games that can build some confidence moving forward. I know Fidel has been telling me they haven't had very many games where they had their entire team there. I remember there was a little bug going around that Kamari Wilson couldn't play. I knew Uzma Harper needed some time to get in the groove with football, but this definitely can be a stepping stone for Carmel for not only their season moving forward in conference, but just in general to see where they can go. I'm a little surprised at this point in the season with them being under 500.
Maybe they need a little bit of home cooking, but they played last weekend in Moline. They were on the road during the holiday break. Now you got games in Lakes here tomorrow night, and then you got to play at Marion Central. Not to say, Carmel's level is probably much higher on their schedule, obviously, than these teams. A couple of victories would be helpful. I mean, you're 6-9 at this point. You haven't won anything in the East Suburban Catholic. Marion Catholic, by the way, is 2-11, if that tells you much. Marion Central didn't show much in their holiday tournament. So here's a chance they can take advantage. I think Lakes is going to give them a little run for their money. But I don't know if Lakes has got the cohesivity, the shooters. They got good defense, but I think the pace of play may take advantage in Carmel over Lakes here if they can get the pace of play going. I mean, Lakes shut down Grays Lake Central a few weeks back. It was 36-30. So, it just really depends if you're going to make your shots or not. But this might be a good time to see Carmel take themselves to another gear and pick up some victories.
Definitely, indeed. And Lakes will also play Wakanda, who is 9-3 on Saturday, I believe. Saturday. Wakanda is 2-0 in conference. Lakes is 1-1 in conference. Wakanda, very impressive coming out of the gates this year. But let's talk more North Suburban as we look at the Zion Benton Zeebies, who are 8-7, 1-2 in conference, as they take on the Warren Blue Devils, who are 4-8. I'm really surprised on this record, but Warren, I don't think will go down without a fight either. This should be and people might say I'm crazy, but I think this is a very even matchup come Friday night. I know the football guys are trying to get into a groove, but what do you think will be the key in this matchup?
Well, one thing about the ZBs, they have a game tonight, which is a big rivalry. They're playing at North Chicago against the Warhawks. And North Chicago, has been struggling. And if North Chicago can say, hey, we get a game here, we're going to look bigger and better ourselves to beat our rival down the road, Zion Benton. So the ZBs are looking to put the sting on North Chicago and then carry it over later in the week to get back to conference play and take on Warren on Friday night. Good matchup tonight. What comes out of this game tonight could be a little bit of a jump here to help out one of the teams. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this game. It's our Monday night game, one of those rare Mondays. But after a break, what do you expect out of a game like this? You had a little time off from last week. Is it going to be a game that's going to be a good one, or if it's going to be a little sloppy for the first half? That I'm not sure about, but I know it's going to be a good battle. This is a typical game you're going to see in the 70s or 80s at least.
Without a doubt, I love those high-scoring games. And the next matchup we'll look at is game taking place tomorrow as the Round Lake Panthers hit the road to take on Lake Zurich. Round Lake also plays this Saturday against Grays Lake North. And as mentioned, Lake Zurich will play Libertyville on Friday. So, Rusty, how would you say, coming from a break, that Lake Zurich and Round Lake would match up with each other?
I'm expecting this to be a good game. I really do. I think both teams have highly skilled players, more so with the McNeil and the Williams tandem. I think they're going to lead the way. I'm really interested in seeing this game because Round Lake has played so well the last couple of weeks. So Lake Zurich, though, they can play some defense. It's their own field house. It's their own place to play. They feel good at home. How's Round Lake going to feel playing there? I mean, hey, wait a minute. They just got done in Marengo. I guess that could help them out a little bit, but they only won a couple games there. So Great start for Round Lake. Lake Zurich is trying to get their feet underneath them to be a more competitive team in the North Suburban. So I think these two teams kind of look pretty good against one another.
Without a doubt, and I think Lake Zurich has just been blowing my mind on the strides they made from where they were last year. And I know they want to get back to the level of spirit that they were, I believe, 3 or 2 years ago when they made it to the sectional. So Lake Zurich, definitely a team you can't take lightly. And Round Lake just continues to improve as well. And then the last matchup we'll look at before we hop off here is the North Chicago Warhawks, as mentioned, 4-11, but 2-0 in conference. Don't forget that. Take on the Grays Lake Central Rams, who are 5-8, 1-1 in conference play on the road. What do you think is the missing piece to the Grays Lake Central Rams formula to staying in the mix in the Northern Lake County that they can maybe find in this game?
I think what's missed with them during the first part of the season might be consistency in knocking down shots. I think scoring and getting that full game potential out of their shooters. I mean, they've got defense. They can play with anybody. I got nothing wrong with that. They've got some game players. But I think it's just knocking down the shots on a consistent rate. I know earlier this year I saw them play Zion Benton out in Thanksgiving, and they were shooting lights out, 17 of 23 in the first half? But then they went in a dry spell in the second half. They ended up losing that game in overtime. And then the game against Lakes, we did that game on a Saturday afternoon. They couldn't hit a shot. And there's been some games they look like they can play, but can they be consistently through for every single part of the game to get a complete game victory? That is the tough part. And, it happens for some teams. Sometimes you got to give credit to the coaches that come in with a great game plan that stops you from shooting like that. Or sometimes it's your own self that you step on your own feet. You're not playing the game that you want to be played on the court.
Yeah, and it's definitely the shots going down, how consistent you are, game of runs. That's what basketball is. You can, in the snap of a finger, everything can shift. You can't sleep. But Rusty, I think we thank you for coming on the show. We thank Joe Aguilar for coming on the show. Rusty, do you want to promote your show a little bit before we hop off the air on Saturdays?
Yeah, I hope you don't mind. I want to say one thing before we go. This Saturday night, they have the Steve Pappas shootout going on at DePaul College Prep. I know we didn't touch on Deerfield, who's been about a 500 team. Steve Pappas, believe it or not, was a long-time coach that was at Gordon Tech before he came to DePaul College Prep. Then he came over to Deerfield and was a long-time coach, added in, I think it was like 25, 30 years, but he was like 15 years at DePaul College Prep, another 10 or plus years over at Deerfield before he passed away in his late 50s. And they're doing a shootout for him, which is going to have 4 games, which includes Deerfield playing DePaul College Prep at 7:30 on Saturday night over there. And then, by the way, DePaul College Prep is like right down the street from like WGN by Lane Tech over there. So that'll be pretty good fun on the weekend to go to that. As for our show, we'll be on Saturday morning with the Sports Corner from 8 to 10 o'clock, and we'll be talking about a lot of things coming up this weekend: high school sports, national sports, you name it, we have it on the show there.
Talk about national sports. How about that crazy NFL playoffs this week? I only got one game right, the Seattle game. The other ones were just mind-blowing.
Yeah, we'll give you a break because you were out of town for a while, so you didn't know what was going on. Out of country for that matter. You were out of place, but then again, so was everybody else because there were 3 visiting teams that won out of 4, so figure that out.
Before we go, who do you got winning the national championship next Monday? Clemson or LSU? I got Clemson.
Can I say Northwestern? No. I'll go with Clemson. I think Clemson experience. LSU's got a nice quarterback, but there's something about winning a title the year before that carries you over.
Without a doubt. And Rusty, we thank you, as always, for coming on the show. We thank Joe Aguilar for coming on the show. You can catch him on Thursday, 1 to 2 with John Kerr. But this is Carson Beck, your host of Lake County Sports Coop, live from Round Lake Beach Metro Station. And so long, and have a good week, and enjoy some high school sports.
You're listening to 98.3 FM, WRLR LP, Round Lake, Illinois.
Today's sports broadcast is made possible by O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC. Proud to sponsor another season of Lake County High School sports broadcasts on WRLR 98.3 FM. Helping home buyers, sellers, and others with real estate transactions. O'Keefe, Lewis, and Bruno PC can be reached at 847-675-4790.
Hi, I'm Frank Tarzeski, inviting you to listen to Music Matters every Friday from 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3 on your FM dial. I play polkas, I play country, I play crazy songs, I play requests and jazz. That's Music Matters 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRLR 98.3.
Cornicchione's New York-style pizzeria in Antioch at routes 83 and 173 is another proud sponsor of WRLR Sports. Cornicchione's pizza dough is made from scratch using a family recipe that originated in Brooklyn, New York. Their dough is proofed at least 24 hours. Cornicchione's menu includes pizzas, calzones, pasta, much more. They have dine-in, carry-out, and delivery. Their number is 224-308-1499.
Parents, did you know that high school dropouts make 42% less than graduates? Someone will have to make up that difference, and chances are that will be you. That means paying 42% of their groceries.
Ooh, more candy.
42% of their dentist bills.
No more candy.
Even 42% of their therapy sessions.
It's all my dad's fault.
Save your money. Encourage your kids to stay in school. For help and advice, call 877-FORAKID. A message from the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
I like doo-wop music. My friends like doo-wop music. But all that counts is you like doo-wop music. I know you do. Admit it, you really do. Mark Shanahan likes doo-wop too. He's got a doo-wopper of a music library and lots of doo-wop energy. He wants to share his doo-wop music with you. So set your fingers snapping and tune that dial to Mark's doo-wop hour every Monday afternoon at 2, right here on 98.3 FM and WRLR and WRLR.FM online. Uh-huh, doo-wop.
WRLR 98.3 FM.
And mine, 2 sips of wine. Memories are made of this.